Welcome to the Horns of Light Chronicles. Peter Berbelis chronicles his family story, prophecy, and testimony. God's story unfolds from his grandfather in Lithuania, Nazi Germany, the Russian Revolution, to Ronald Reagan and the fall of the Berlin Wall, the gospel spreading across to Eastern Europe, how God called Peter to Petra, Jordan, and so much more as prophecy and testimonies unfold. And now the Horns of Light Chronicles. Well, how fun today on Horns of Light. We get to go back to Petra on a second trip. And oh, the adventures and oh, the scripture that I think is going to come to light for you in beautiful, amazing ways. We even have a wonderful picture to share. So, Pete, take us back.
Sure. Kind of the last two times we talked, kind of went through the story of Habakkuk 3 and coming downstairs, and my wife is in that same passage, and she kind of draws up a sketch of God getting ready to shoot his arrows at the earth. And so that kind of moment comes, and my wife and I were trying to go to Israel together through kind of a strange set of circumstances. She finds out from one of her aunts that she may be Jewish, and it's just a kind of another story. And so we've been trying to plan this trip, but we end up moving to Kansas City and have to kind of redo the house and have to keep putting it off. And finally, we're able to that point where we're able to go. And so her birthday is on April 10th. And last year, we scheduled it so we could be there over her birthday, and went to Israel, and then did another trip into Petra, Jordan. And it was kind of really interesting. A few things that happened on that trip was kind of went through in that last episode about the possibility of Paul being in Petra, and then him going up to meet Peter, that he says he didn't meet with any of the disciples, but Peter met Paul in Jerusalem. And just as kind of we're getting ready, we're not sure if we're going to be able to make it to Petra, Jordan, because there's a huge rain and roads are flooded out. And there's a couple deaths where they had to fly in and pull bodies out as a result of these flash floods. But a couple days before that, just sitting having breakfast in, oddly enough, this Russian hotel. And I meet a guy by the name of Paul in Jerusalem, and we kind of just start talking a little bit with each other. And then we go, my wife and I go to the upper room that day, and him and his wife end up being there, not the upper room, but the place kind of in Jerusalem that's, memorialized as the place of the upper room. Obviously, with it being destroyed, that's not the same place. And that guy, Paul, ends up being there. And it was just a beautiful time of fellowship in the Lord. Lady broke open her violin that was there, and this group just started worshiping the Lord. And it was just such a beautiful place to remember what happened in the book of Acts, and just a wonderful time of worshiping the Lord. People literally dropped to their knees with their hands lifted up towards heaven, and it was just a special time. And then another kind of exciting or interesting event that happened is we were walking back to our hotel where we were staying outside of the city walls of Jerusalem, the old city, and we come upon a group that is just praising the Lord by the government building there just outside of the old city, Jerusalem. And what was so special about that is there was Filipinos, my wife and I, another American who was married to an Egyptian, and a guy from Australia came in, and we were just worshiping the Lord all together, and joined as these people were just playing, and passersby, I think, were looking on. But it was just beautiful to know that someday that all the nations will gather, and Jerusalem will truly be a praise in all the earth. So that was kind of a cool thing to experience. So then we end up heading to Petra, Jordan. Wasn't necessarily my wife's favorite place. You're getting into an Arab nation where, head coverings and all those types of things. And as we're driving alongside the road, there's people still living in tents. That kind of helped give a better understanding of Paul being a tent maker and these kind of elaborate tents that the Nabateans would, use as their homes as they traveled through the desert. So that was just it's just an interesting landscape too, rugged mountains, not a lot of greenery. We rented a car this time and drove up, and then we ended up getting there, and my wife wanted to do the Petra tour at night, kind of a thing, so we decided to do that. And as she's walking in, it's just beautiful. She just starts snapping pictures as we're going into that narrow passageway, and then as part of Habakkuk 3, a couple days later, really felt, it talks about Christ. It talks about a praise being released in all the earth, kind of that idea of us praising the Lord, awaiting his return, kind of that bridegroom type of thing, and really felt as a result of that passage in Habakkuk 3, where it talks about a praise in all the earth, that I was supposed to go to the high place of sacrifice and just release a praise to the Lord from that place where many bad things happened. So woke up early in the morning, right as Petra opened up, hustled to get to that the steps that lead up, carved in stone. Kind of talked a little bit about that before, to get to this high place of sacrifice, and there was an Arab guy up at the top there, so was just started. We chatted a little bit, and he pointed to where Aaron's tomb was at the top of some other mountains, peaks of the mountains. Whether it is or isn't, I don't know, but it seems like a case can be made that that's where Aaron died and was buried. So then just kind of went to where the altar was and just released a praise, not very loud. Didn't know how this guy was going to take it, but just started singing to the Lord. And then no beam of light this time. Nothing really special happened. And walking down, had a shofar with me, blew that. And then that was kind of it. I was kind of a little puzzled. It wasn't anything like the last time where you felt this amazing presence. If anything, I felt kind of a wimp for not singing louder. And so anyway, it was just, so got back to my wife at the hotel, and then we ended up heading back into Israel, and then coming back home. And that was the time of Passover, where both, when we were there last year, was both days coincided on the calendar, Passover and Easter. So then a couple wanted to get together and just kind of see the pictures of what happened on our trip. And my wife just starts, showing her the pictures as she's flipping through, and the lady stops her and says, "That's Orion." So she sketches out Orion, and the kind of that same picture of the sketch that my wife had made when she saw in Habakkuk 3 of the Lord getting ready to shoot his arrows at the earth. And so, that same sign in the heavens ends up kind of being portrayed, and she sketches that out, which is, if you look at the sketch that my wife made and this lady as she drew Orion in the stars. And just kind of another thing that's, makes it a little bit more interesting is that kind of a blow up of that picture. But as you walk into Petra, you're going in an area that's high cliffs, so you don't get to see the full view of the stars and the heavens. And just kind of an interesting thing too, that the timing of that trip, we were trying to go, and then had rearranged our flights and paid that price 1 or 2 times, if I remember correctly. And finally we go, and it was for that time and for that season that we were supposed to be there. And I don't fully understand it, but then obviously a few months later, war breaks out in Israel, and so that's just an interesting component of the story.
We got a picture that'll be on this episode of Orion. And how do you feel as you interpret that picture, what God's trying to portray through Habakkuk 3 and that idea of Orion?
I don't, boy, if you have any insight, feel free to kind of share and open up. But what was interesting to me is, as you study Orion is mentioned in the Bible, and it's mentioned in the book of Job, which we could get into one other strange story related to that, but I don't know that that'd be answering your question. But I just feel I don't ever want to put times into it. So I don't ever want to try and say this is that, these are those times, but it certainly feels with everything that's going on in the world that we are approaching that time, or at the very least, I'd say a time that, a foreshadowing of what's to come. Kind of Habakkuk, I'm sure, as the Lord was unraveling all these things to him, he probably thought that, this is it. This is what the prophets spoke of, and this is Isaiah 63 and all those other things, Isaiah 25. These are those times. So it just seems like whether this be that final time or not, God is, I guess to me, it speaks of the control, what looks like chaos breaking out in the earth. It's kind of mentioned a little bit earlier to you when we spoke before the show, but that Isaiah 25:1, that God has established these plans long ago. And as they unravel, we can be assured that, that the forces of evil will not win, and that his plans will be fulfilled in all the earth, and that's something to praise him for. I a lot of times I just don't like necessarily to read too much into it, because when I've kind of done that in the past, where I've tried to think this is his ways are higher than our ways, and I just kind of wait for him to unfold the full meaning, and there's breadcrumbs all along the way.
There are. And the passage in Job you're referring to, well, there's actually two mentions of Orion in Job, but the second one has always meant something to me because it's kind of where I got saved. Because it's God asking Job questions. Like I was saved through reading the Bible, and I was actually getting madder and madder and madder at God as the more I read, because it just didn't make any sense to me why such a nice God would do such amazingly what appeared to be horrible things in my view. And then I got to the book of Job, and I got really mad that God would, put on this spectacle for Satan by taking this man's kids and all this other stuff. And I was furious until I got to the end of Job, where this passage is, and where he started saying, okay, Job, I got a few questions for you. Well, the way I took that is, Robby, I got a few questions for you. And one of those questions is, can you bind the sweet influences of Pleiades or loose the bands of Orion?
Yep.
Or can you make it snow, Robby, or bring in the tide one time since you got it all figured out?
Yeah.
And at that point in time in my life, I was like, well, man, I can't possibly, do these things. So there is a God, and it must be him, and he obviously has a high standard I don't meet. So all of a sudden the need for Christ became very, very real in my life, and actually got myself off the throne. But as I look at this passage, just again, there's more questions, there are answers, but it's more than beautiful, especially when you look at the picture that his wife drew, that Pete's wife drew, when it says, thy bow was made quite naked, according to the oaths of the tribes, even thy word. And then it says Selah. So the things that just jump out at me when I look at that is that the idea of nakedness is throughout a theme in the Bible that we desperately need to pay attention to, because just like I was terribly naked before I was covered in Christ's blood, and this is what he's talking about. Clearly, the poor tribes are going to rage, like it says in the second Psalm, right? They're going to rage against Israel, and they're showing their nakedness. Whether, however you want to look at that, that's clearly part of what's going on there. But when he says, even thy word, because as you look at these passages, he's talking about he has to slay his son, and his son was naked on the cross.
Yes.
But as Boaz was the kinsman redeemer that would lay his skirt over Ruth at the foot of his bed, right? Well, at the foot of the cross, Jesus lays his skirt over us, and I see this in this passage, in that it says he's going to lay all that naked, even thy word. Well, the word is Jesus, and Jesus is the word. And he's fixed to talk about how he's going to cleave the rivers. But before he does that, he says Selah. And you don't find that word just everywhere in the Bible. You find it a lot in the Psalms.
Sure.
And a lot of people argue about what that means. What I know for sure in the word Selah is it starts with the letter Samic. And the letter Samic has to do with something gigantically miraculous. And so it's almost like a gigantic exclamation point. Like the idea of gigantic risk-taking starts with a Selah. So something big, 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 big is happening here. And then he says, that's how cleave the earth with rivers. And again, water is also Jesus.
Yes. And
it's going to go on to talk about being mad at the water, which is fascinating because he ends up obviously slaying his son on the cross. It's really deep and clearly a message, I believe, in my heart of hearts, that this message is for Israel.
Yes.
That as they enter into the time of Jacob's trouble, when that may be happening, and I would love to take part in this wedding supper of the Lamb sooner rather than later, as you would, Pete.
Yes.
But in the time of Jacob's trouble, the Jews are going to look to the heavens for answers. And, there may be something in Orion in that picture that we all see as far as this bow is concerned. I don't know. It's absolutely beautiful. I hate we're out of time, but it's so fun always to talk with you, Pete, and your love for the scriptures and your love to dig deep and your research. They totally amaze me. I hope they amaze you listening and help you all just maybe pick up those passages, read them, and think for yourself, what is this? And God, where do you find me in this? And I love where he has Pete, and all of us should be there, is in this place of intercession, right? As praying for the peace of Israel. So thanks, Pete.
And for the salvation of Israel too. I mean, those are his people.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you, my brother. I'm so grateful for your participation, and we will be back soon. God bless.
God bless.